North Carolina state government has one of the nation's best funded pension plans, so there's no reason to worry about it, right? Well, our next guests suggest there is need for some concern, and they say now is a good time for needed reforms. Leonard Gilroy is Vice President for Government Reform at the Libertarian Reason Foundation. He is Senior Managing Director of Reason's Pension Integrity Project. Jen Sidorova is a policy analyst for Reason's Pension Integrity Project. They just worked on a recent study of the North Carolina pension plan for Reason and the John Locke Foundation. Welcome to the program.
Thank you for having us. Appreciate being here.
Good to be here.
So this is the state pension plan that deals with retired government workers, teachers, and for years we've heard, hey, this is in good shape. The funding has been almost 100% or at least more than 90% for years and years. You looked at this plan, though, and said, you know, the news is not all roses. There's some reason for concern. How so?
Well, thanks for the question. The work that we've done is looking at the teachers and state employees retirement system here in North Carolina, which has been historically regarded as and has been a well-funded plan relative to other public pension plans nationally. What we see, though, today is a situation in which that plan, which has been historically healthy, today, after arguably 10 years at the top of a bull run in the market, et cetera, is sitting at 86% funded today, when we would rather see pension plans after a decade of markets climbing and moving off the recession be closer to 100% funded. And so we got in and dug in and analyzed what's happening there and what factors are at play and make some recommendations about how to take what is structurally a pretty well-designed plan and make some tweaks to orient it for the future.
And Jen, I imagine that you did a lot of the legwork on this. As you looked at it, what did you see as some of the things that stood out?
So we did some stress testing, and we put their financials into a position so let's look at what happens if the plan underperforms. What if the interest rate is not going to be as high as the plan leadership thinks, or what's going to happen if we hit the next recession? And that's a question I'm pretty sure is, in everyone's heads right now. So in both scenarios, if the plan underperforms only by 1%, it can accumulate up to $16 billion in liabilities over the next 30 years. And right now it's the unfunded liabilities right now are about $11 billion. So it's more than doubles if the plan underperforms only by 1%, which you wouldn't seem like all that much, but it ends up being, a lot at the end of the day. And the same, practically the same fiscal impact is brought up by, a possible recession. So we kind of looked at what's going to happen if the returns that we had in the last recession are going to happen in the next couple of years. And we saw that, the fiscal impact is going to be pretty much the same as, more than doubling of unfunded liabilities. And we also looked at other things like how the funded ratio would perform. And we see that there's a lot of uncertainty brought up by, stress from outside.
So basically, it sounds as if both of you and your co-workers on this, along with John Locke Foundation and Joe Coletti, said, the good times are not going to last forever. We know we're going to take some kind of hit. How will this pension plan stack up when the next bad time hits? Is that right?
No, that's right. I mean, and that's what policymakers across the country should be asking today, given that we've got over $1.3 trillion of unfunded public pension liabilities at the state and local level across the country. Again, after 10 years of being at the top of a market, you could argue a historic run, and we have plans that are still sitting in the 70 to 80% funded range on average. That suggests that there are factors at play beyond even just markets that we really need to be attuned to. The good news, I guess, for North Carolina would be that a lot of the design features and sort of pension plan elements that other states get wrong, that have led to the $1.3+ trillion of unfunded liabilities nationally, North Carolina in this TSERS plan, the Teachers and State Employees Plan, doesn't do a lot of those things. It's got some very good design features built in, and I think that's what's notable, is that despite having lots of good design features built in to pay off your unfunded liabilities faster, to be more conservative than other pension plans, that sort of thing nationally. Still, despite that, you can have just a couple of things that, if they go wrong, as my colleague Jen was just saying, if you are just, instead of getting a 7% investment return, which the plan is expecting, if you get just 6, which is not a crazy number, I think in our own personal investment histories, and I think what we see out there institutions getting, this is not an unrealistic or meant to create fear. This is, what if something normal happens, and as our numbers would suggest, you could more than double your current unfunded liabilities over the next couple of decades. That still, even with mechanisms built to keep it resilient, you have some factors that can still come into play. And so we think that this now is the time, before the next recession hits, and before every agency is coming to the state appropriators asking for more money, that you should take care of first things first. And this would be one of those elements in terms of fiscal priorities of the state. Taking care of the promises made to retired teachers and public workers, I would say, is up there in terms of the priority list.
We are speaking with Leonard Gilroy and Jen Sidorova with the Reason Foundation and its Pension Integrity Project. You've alluded to them already, but what are some of the things North Carolina should do now while it has the opportunity?
Well, the first thing that stood out when we looked at what brought us to this moment when we had all those unfunded liabilities was the unrealized investment return. And investment return is something that it's the return that we expect from our portfolio of assets. And if you look at the dynamic over the past 17 years, the average return was about 6.3%. And the plan is currently at 7% expected return. So that's, it's been underperforming. And if you look at the turn of the century, when most of the plans were fully funded, and North Carolina was actually at 110% funded. Now it's only about 86.7% funded. So it's if you look at the big picture, at the dynamic throughout the years, it's been trending downward. So it's quite a significant dip that it made. So another thing that stood out was the interest on debt, and it's another very taxing thing on the plan, because that's the most expensive debt that you can have, and it's growing at least at the rate of your assumed return, which is 7%, and it's a high rate for your debt to grow at. So I think I would point those two things that I would prioritize. But as my colleague said, there are a lot of things that North Carolina does correctly, and we pointed out in our report as well, because it has been lowering the assumed rate of return, and it's putting their unfunded liabilities on a short 12-year amortization schedule, and that's much better than a lot of the plans. But at the same time, you got to be mindful that you got to keep improving your funding policy, like maybe making those small changes here and now so that you don't have to deal with the crisis situation in a couple of years.
In the time that we have left, some people are going to be listening to us and saying, look, North Carolina's plan is in good shape, especially compared to other states. This is not something we really need to worry about now. Why should we be worrying about it now?
Well, the history nationally is that the folks who have said that are inevitably proven wrong later when market conditions change, and then, a plan that was, like in North Carolina, it's a great example. 10, 15 years ago, 100% funded, now down in the 80s. That's good relative to others where 10, 15 years ago, maybe they weren't as well funded, and now they're even at a lower funded status. But basically what we see is that conditions can change pretty quickly. Conditions can change in the marketplace such that, I guess, the price of being wrong, or the price of being too prudent with a pension system, I think is smaller than the price of being wrong. The price of being wrong with the pension system manifests itself in, right now in this state at least, 11 point something billion dollars of unfunded liabilities in a plan that's pretty well run and doesn't have many problems, and you've got 11 billion in unfunded liabilities. And so what we look at is say, the markets are probably unlikely to just deliver that right back to you easily. So it's going to take investment. It's going to take money, literally, to invest in this plan to sort of get it back to full health. And I think in those situations, for the people who get worried about it, we would say that an ounce of prevention, I guess it's sort of that sort of thing. Putting money in now to get the funded status back, to start making the changes like my colleague Jen suggested, to keep this plan from getting new unfunded liabilities in the future, that is time well spent and energy well spent in the political environment, because if you wait until the alarms are flashing officially where everybody agrees that there's a problem, by that point you're probably in the 60% funded range, and it becomes a lot more expensive and politically difficult to get the kinds of changes done. So in the interest of sustaining the plan that you have today, fine-tuning adjustments along the way, course corrections like the kinds that we're talking about, are absolutely the way to keep a plan solvent, because otherwise the fixes later get massively expensive, or you just end up like Kentucky, Connecticut, New Jersey, Illinois, and those are places that a decade or two ago thought they didn't have any problems either, and now they're basically scraping for solutions.
Pay me now or pay me much more later.
That's exactly right.
That is Leonard Gilroy. You also heard from his colleague Jen Sidorova. They are with the Reason Foundation and its Pension Integrity Project. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.